We're counting down the 10 most powerful American cities of the Gilded Age, places where booming industry, ski-high fortunes, and global influence changed the world. From unexpected Great Lakes gateways to industrial giants brimming with millionaires, each city earned its spot through sheer economic output, industrial dominance, and cultural clout. Some rose on rivers of steel or rivers of gold. Others shaped banking, trade, or even entire industries. But which city stood above them all? Let's begin our ranking with number 10. Buffalo's rise began at the meeting point of the Great Lakes and the Erie Canal. By 1900, 352,000 people called the city home, and its grain elevators towered over the waterfront, feeding mills that processed wheat from the Midwest on a scale few cities could match. As grain shipments poured in by lake and departed by canal and rail, Buffalo became a vital choke point, controlling the flow of food to the East Coast and Europe. The city's fortunes soared again when engineers harnessed the power of Niagara Falls, transmitting electricity over 20 miles to light Buffalo's streets and drive its factories. This was the first large-scale alternating current power project in the world, and it turned Buffalo into a magnet for new industries and investors. In 1901, the Pan American Exposition put Buffalo on the world stage, showcasing electric marvels and grand architecture. The fair drew international crowds, but it was also the site of President McKinley's assassination, a tragedy that underscored Buffalo's global significance. At the dawn of the 20th century, with 6 millionaire families and control over Great Lakes shipping and grain, Buffalo stood as the industrial gateway between America's heartland and the world. By 1890, Cincinnati pulsed with the energy of nearly 300,000 residents, and with the constant movement of commerce along the Ohio River. Earning its nickname Porkopolis, the city processed more hogs than anywhere else in America, with millions of animals moving through sprawling slaughterhouses each year, their byproducts fueling soap factories and export markets. The riverbanks echoed with the sounds of steamboat construction, as Cincinnati's yards built more vessels than any other city on the Ohio, turning the city into a vital artery for Midwest trade. In 1837, candlemaker William Proctor and soapmaker James Gamble joined forces, founding a company that would become a household name, and that anchored Cincinnati as a center for branded consumer goods. German immigrants poured their expertise and capital into breweries, making Cincinnati a beer capital to rival any city in the East. Wealth from pork, boats, and beer flowed into grand homes and civic projects, with more than a dozen millionaire families funding cultural landmarks like Music Hall. Cincinnati's command of river logistics and consumer brands carved out a place of power in the Gilded Age's industrial heartland. Baltimore's waterfront bustled with ships, loading and unloading cargo, destined for the Atlantic and beyond. By 1900, the city's population had reached over 500,000, and its port ranked among the busiest in the nation, rivaling even New York for the volume and variety of trade. The harbor's deep channels brought in raw materials and sent out manufactured goods, while the city's merchant fleet connected Baltimore to markets across the globe. Anchoring this network was the headquarters of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, the very first commercial railroad in the United States. Chartered in 1827, the B&O stretched westward, linking the port to the growing cities and farms of the interior. This synergy between rail and sea created a powerful engine for growth, fueling Baltimore's rise as a manufacturing center. Shipyards along the Patapsco River launched steel-hulled vessels, and steel mills supplied materials for rails, bridges, and buildings. Baltimore's canning industry led the nation, processing millions of oysters and vegetables each year for shipment around the world. The fortunes built here supported more than 15 millionaire families, and philanthropists like Johns Hopkins left legacies in education and medicine that shaped the city's character. Baltimore's command of both port and rail made it a gateway for Atlantic trade and a true powerhouse of the Gilded Age. St. Louis boomed at the turn of the 20th century. Its population swelled to 575,000, and its riverfront was crowded with barges and steamboats. The Mississippi River powered the city's ascent, funneling cotton, grain, and manufactured goods between north and south, while rail lines pushed commerce westward. This crossroads position turned St. Louis into a manufacturing giant, where goods flowed in, fortunes were made, and entire industries took root. The Anheuser-Busch brewing dynasty built a national network from the city's German immigrant traditions, shipping lager across the country on refrigerated rail cars. At the same time, St. Louis produced more shoes than any other city on earth. Its factories churned out millions of pairs each year, employing thousands and dominating the global market. Streetcar plants lined the city's industrial corridors, assembling the vehicles that connected neighborhoods and supplied booming towns nationwide. In 1904, St. Louis hosted the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, drawing nearly 20 million visitors to Forest Park. The fair's grand palaces and electric lights displayed the city's wealth and ambition, capping an era when St. Louis stood as the undisputed gateway to the American West, where river, rail, and relentless industry shaped a metropolis of power and promise. San Francisco's fortunes exploded in the rush for gold and silver, but the city's real power came from what happened after the first strikes faded. By 1900, more than 342,000 people lived in a city where fortunes from the Comstock Lode and Sierra mines flowed straight into the vaults of the Bank of California and Wells Fargo. These banks didn't just hold money, they financed new mines, built railroads, and backed shipping empires that stretched from Alaska to Chile and across the Pacific. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 made San Francisco the western terminus for goods, people, and capital, turning the city into the command post for Pacific Rim trade. Cargoes of tea, silk, and porcelain arrived from Asia, while California wheat and Nevada silver departed for global markets. Nob Hill's mansions rose above the fog, built by railroad barons and mining magnates whose names still echo through San Francisco's streets. In Chinatown, the largest outside Asia, merchants and laborers created a web of connections that linked the city to villages and ports across the Pacific. With more than 30 millionaire families, San Francisco became the undisputed capital of the West, a city where mineral riches and transoceanic trade gave rise to a new kind of American power. Boston in 1900 was home to over 500,000 people, but its true power lay in the wealth and influence accumulated over centuries. The city's fortunes began with merchant families whose roots stretched back to the colonial era, and by the Gilded Age, these Brahmins formed a tightly knit elite that shaped every corner of Boston society. Profits from the textile mills of Lowell, just up the Merrimack River, poured into Boston's banks and investment houses. These mills, among the first large-scale factories in America, generated massive fortunes that were quickly reinvested into finance, railroads, and urban real estate. Unlike the new money boom towns of the West, Boston's old money families created lasting institutions. Harvard, founded in 1636, and MIT, established in 1861, stood as symbols of intellectual dominance, their endowments swollen by Brahmin donations and textile profits. Publishing houses flourished, printing the nation's leading newspapers and books, while the city's banks and insurance companies rivaled those of New York in size and reach. By 1900, Boston counted more than 40 millionaire families, many related by marriage, business, or shared ancestry, concentrating wealth and influence in Back Bay and Beacon Hill. Shipping and maritime trade still played a role, but continuity of inherited fortunes and control of education, culture, and banking set Boston apart. This was a city where old money dictated the pace of change, and where the legacy of the past shaped the future of American power. Philadelphia in 1900 stood as the nation's third largest city, its population soaring past 1.3 million, and its industrial output rivaled entire countries. The city earned its title as the workshop of the world by producing everything from locomotives and ships to textiles and refined oil. At the center of this manufacturing universe was Baldwin Locomotive Works, the world's largest builder of steam locomotives. Baldwin's factories turned out engines by the thousands, powering railroads across North America and beyond, and setting the global standard for precision engineering. But Philadelphia's industrial might did not rest on a single pillar. Textile mills lined the Schuylkill River, churning out cloth and garments that clothed millions. Shipyards on the Delaware built ironclad vessels for both commerce and war, while oil refineries processed Pennsylvania crude into kerosene and lubricants for a rapidly modernizing world. The city's steel foundries, though overshadowed by Pittsburgh, produced rails, bridges, and tools that helped knit the country together. Finance flowed through the Philadelphia Stock Exchange, the oldest in the United States, providing capital for factories, shipping lines, and new inventions. This economic engine fueled fortunes for more than 50 millionaire families, their wealth concentrated in the elegant townhouses and mansions surrounding Rittenhouse Square, known as the wealthiest residential square mile in America. In Philadelphia, old merchant dynasties and new industrialists mingled, their influence stretching from boardrooms to City Hall. The city's diversified output and locomotive supremacy secured its place as a powerhouse of the Gilded Age, shaping the industrial future of the nation. Pittsburgh, at the turn of the 20th century, was a city defined by fire and fortune. With a population of 452,000, it produced more than 60% of all steel in the United States, enough to lay the tracks, build the bridges, and raise the skyscrapers that powered the nation's growth. The city's industrial might rested on the shoulders of men like Andrew Carnegie, whose steel empire stretched from the iron mines to the rolling mills, and who perfected vertical integration long before it became a business school buzzword. Carnegie's partnership and later rivalry with Henry Clay Frick fueled both expansion and conflict as fortunes ballooned and tempers flared. The Mellons, meanwhile, turned banking and aluminum into new avenues for wealth, their influence echoing through the city's marble mansions and boardrooms. But Pittsburgh's power came at a human and environmental cost. The Homestead Strike of 1892 erupted when steelworkers at Carnegie's flagship mill demanded fair wages and safer conditions. Frick, determined to break the union, called in Pinkerton detectives. The result was a violent clash that left at least 10 dead and dozens wounded, a national symbol of the era's labor wars. While the city's more than 60 millionaire families grew richer, workers toiled around the clock, breathing air so thick with soot that gas lamps burned by day and laundry turned black overnight. Photographs from the time show a skyline veiled in smoke, the sun barely piercing the haze. Pittsburgh's iron grip on steel production reshaped the American economy, supplying the raw material for rails, ships, and machinery. The city's monopoly on heavy industry concentrated more per capita wealth here than anywhere else in the country, even as the price was paid in broken strikes and darkened skies. In the Gilded Age, Pittsburgh was the furnace where the future was forged, relentless, wealthy, and unyielding. Chicago's rise was nothing short of astonishing. In 1871, flames swept through the city, leaving a third of it in ruins. But within a generation, Chicago had rebuilt and multiplied, reaching 1.7 million people by 1900, second only to New York. At the city's heart stood the railroads. More than 20 major railroad lines converged here, transforming Chicago into the crossroads of America. Every day, trains rolled in from the prairies, loaded with wheat, corn, and cattle, and rolled out again carrying manufactured goods to every corner of the country. The Union stockyards sprawled over nearly 500 acres, their gates swallowing 9 million animals a year by the 1890s. Chicago's packing houses, led by Swift, Armour, and Cudahy, processed over 80% of the nation's meat. Refrigerated rail cars, an innovation perfected here, made it possible for pork and beef to reach dining tables from Boston to San Francisco. Grain, too, was king. The Chicago Board of Trade set the price of wheat and corn for the entire country, its grain exchange floor buzzing with deals that shaped the fate of farmers and bakers alike. Fortunes accumulated at a pace that stunned even seasoned capitalists. More than 100 millionaire families made their homes in Chicago, from Marshall Field's retail empire to the Pullman, McCormick, and Armour dynasties. The city's energy reached a fever pitch in 1893, when the world's Columbian Exposition drew millions to a dazzling white city on the lakefront. The fair's grand boulevards and electric lights announced Chicago's arrival as a world city, rivaling Paris and London in ambition. Yet, beneath the triumph, conflict simmered. The Pullman strike of 1894 brought the city to a standstill, as workers protested wage cuts and harsh conditions. Federal troops put down the strike, a stark reminder of the tensions running through Chicago's industrial machine. At the dawn of the 20th century, Chicago stood as the nation's unrivaled hub of transportation and commodities, a city where rails, stockyards, and ambition shaped the very pulse of American power. In 1900, no city on earth matched the scale or ambition of New York. Its population soared past 3.4 million, dwarfing every American rival and most European capitals. Every day, the city's port churned with activity, handling nearly 70% of all United States imports and exports. Steamships lined the harbor, while customs houses processed goods bound for every continent, making New York the undisputed gateway between America and the world. At the southern tip of Manhattan, Wall Street reigned as the nerve center of American finance. The New York Stock Exchange, with its thunderous trading floor, set the pace for national and international markets. Banks and insurance companies, led by titans like J.P. Morgan, funneled capital into railroads, factories, and infrastructure projects that shaped the continent. When the federal government teetered on the edge of default in 1895, it was Morgan and his syndicate who supplied the gold that stabilized the nation's currency. In New York, money didn't just move markets, it decided the fate of the country. The city's industrial engine ran day and night. 500,000 workers labored in garment lofts, printing shops, piano factories, and food processing plants. The manufacturing census recorded a dizzying array of products, from hats and shoes to machinery and books. This vast workforce powered not only the city's economy, but also the fortunes of its merchant princes. Along Fifth Avenue, rows of marble mansions rose, each grander than the last. Here lived the Vanderbilts, who controlled railroads stretching from New York to Chicago, the Astors, whose real estate empire shaped the city's skyline, the Morgans, who wielded financial power unmatched in the Western Hemisphere, and the Rockefellers, whose Standard Oil monopoly funneled unimaginable wealth into the city's banks. More than 300 millionaire families called New York home. That was more than the rest of the country combined. Their influence extended from boardrooms to the opera boxes, from City Hall to the summer cottages of Newport. Culture flourished on a scale to rival Paris or London. The Metropolitan Opera opened its doors in 1883, drawing Europe's greatest voices and New York's wealthiest patrons. The Metropolitan Museum of Art and the American Museum of Natural History became temples of learning and prestige, while Broadway theaters and concert halls set national trends in music and drama. Above it all, the city's first skyscrapers pierced the clouds, steel-framed towers like the Park Row building and the early headquarters of the Singer Sewing Machine Company. These new heights were more than engineering feats. They were monuments to the city's restless ambition and the fortunes amassed within its walls. By every measure, including trade, finance, manufacturing, culture, and the concentration of wealth, New York stood alone. Its grip on American power was absolute, its influence global. In the Gilded Age, New York was not just the nation's largest city, it was the capital of capitalism itself, the place where fortunes were made, empires built, and the future of America decided. Across all 10 cities, one pattern dominates. In the Gilded Age, bourgs pooled where industry, finance, and innovation collided. These urban giants didn't just shape skylines, they concentrated unprecedented wealth and influence, forging an American aristocracy and accelerating the nation's rise to global power. The legacy remains. Today's economic map still traces the lines drawn by these titans. Power, it turns out, is built where ambition meets opportunity,